going on out there, everybody? This is the Inshore Journal, and welcome back to another product review. Hope you're joining us here either on one of our podcast apps or on YouTube, where the video version of this episode will be. So be sure to check that out if you're not already doing so. But we got a good show coming up here. We just wanted to talk about some stuff that we had touched on our last full-length episode when we were talking about some different spoons. And we said that we were going to come back and show you guys some of these on our next product review. So here we are. So what we got, man?
Well, as we promised, we promised that we would do our next product review with the gold spoons, or actually spoons because we've got different colored spoons here tonight, just like we talked about on the show. I did lie on one little thing. I told you I was going to bring you that black spoon that you'd never seen.
Yep, that's right. You did.
I didn't bring it.
Didn't bring it. the mysterious black spoon that I have yet to see.
I've got a whole bag full of spoons, guys. I'm telling you, I've got a plastic bag full of spoons that's probably got over 200 spoons in it, and I could not put my hands on it the night before I came over to the studio.
Well, here's the other catch on this scenario too, because we also said last time that we were going to try to get these spoons out in the water when we were on the boat next time, and the weather has not cooperated at all. It snowed the last couple days, been raining, windy. It's just all over the place. So we just hadn't been on the boat to put these in the water. But what we can do, maybe this is what we need to do. Let's go ahead and show everybody the spoons, and we can talk a little bit about them, and then we'll have another follow-up where we maybe get some of these in the water, and maybe the black one will make an appearance at that point.
It's going to make an appearance because it's on my boat, and that's the only place I didn't look was in my boat. And I know I've got the black ones in there because I just came back from Charleston, and I put everything from the Action Craft tournament boat into my Shearwater when I got home.
There you go.
I know that's probably where those black spoons were because I always take a couple down there for that clear water in the wintertime.
But that's all right. We've got a good variety here of some other colors and different weights as well that we can talk about and take it from there. Like I said, we want to get these in the water anyway because it's not going to do it really justice having it right here in front of the camera. We'll try to get this in the water so we can get some underwater shots so you guys can see the different flash on the different ones because it is a little bit different.
I'm going to be throwing a lot of this next week in Louisiana.
Yep.
And I'm going to have my tower, so I'll have the GoPro set up.
Cool.
And so I'll go ahead and get some of those shots and send them to you while I'm down there. I know we're going to do some remotes while I'm down there. You're going to be calling me, and I'll call you, and we're going to do a couple updates from, that trip for the Elite Redfish Series event down out of Chalmette and Delacroix.
Yeah, you're going to be down there for next week and a half or two, knocking that out. So maybe I can get some of these videos if you just do some short clips, and then we can throw them on either our YouTube channel via Facebook, or also post some short clips on Instagram as well. So you guys stay tuned on that. We'll get some video stuff out there for these, but let's talk about them and see what's going on.
Okay, let's start out with the most famous out of all of them, the gold
spoon.
Go ahead and hold that up to the camera, Will. Yep. These are made by Cape Lookout, and I do not believe they are being made at all right now. They had the best finish for as the gold spoon holding up of any spoons I've ever used. I mean, that spoon there is probably 3 years old. You can see a little bit of corrosion on the hook where the platings come off of the hook, but I've had very bad experience with a lot of gold spoons, and really some of the biggest name brand like Johnson. I mean, I have had Johnson spoons when I used to buy those before I found out about Cape Lookout spoons, where, I mean, even an hour worth of fishing when the fishing was hot, like we're catching, 15, 20 fish an hour, and sometimes more than that when they're, really turned on in the grass.
Yeah.
And that's when I like to throw these spoons, when you've got some flooded grass, or right when the fish are moving out of the grass or into the grass, or even on some of the clear water flats, where you can even sight fish with these baits, just like we were talking about in the last episode.
Very versatile.
Really versatile bait, works in any color water. Clearer the better. It seems like, the flash. You are going to have a lot of flash even in dirty water, but it seems like a gold spoon works better in clear water. That gold spoon you were just holding up is an 1/8 ounce spoon. or no, quarter-ounce spoon.
Quarter-ounce, yeah.
The most popular spoon size that people throw is half-ounce.
Mm-hmm.
These are smaller. And I just have always liked the smaller spoon because I like the wobble a little bit better than that bigger spoon. That bigger spoon seems to wobble a lot wider. This one's a little bit tighter.
Yep.
And it's a smaller presence in the water, and it's easier, in my opinion, for the fish to get the hook. They don't miss the hook quite as bad on those as they do that half-ounce. But sometimes the half-ounce is what they want because they're eating those bigger mullet minnows in the fall or pogies, and they're really fired up, and it's giving more flash, and it's, when the fish are fired up, sometimes bigger's better. More flash is better.
That's true.
And
you just never know. Sometimes out there, you kind of have to try different things until you find a combination that works a lot of time. But, you don't really have much trouble throwing that out. You can still toss this one a pretty good ways out there.
You can toss it a country mile.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, the way we like to fish with these medium light setups a lot of times. I mean,
Hold it straight into the camera, Will.
You can get it up there.
Hold it. No. Point it at the... No.
Which way? That way?
Yeah, point the swivel at the camera. Look how aerodynamic that bait is. And that's a piece of metal, guys. I know that thing is only a quarter ounce, but think about a quarter of an ounce that is... I mean, it's almost like an arrowhead if you look at it. And, that bait is really... It cuts right through the wind. I mean, you can just... when... You fish with me, I whip a cast, man. I mean, it's a line drive, when I'm fishing into the wind, and that thing
it'll
cuts right through it, man. If you keep it low. Now, if you get it high and it rainbows, everything's gonna come back in your face. Yeah. You'll get that flutter of that hook, that wide part of, it's like a kite. It'll blow back at you. But, you can use any size. A lot of times what I do in clear water and in pressured fisheries, I'll even go down to the 1/8 of an ounce spoon and kind of cover that other part up. Just hold the spoon up.
Yeah, let me, this might be a little hard for me to hold. I'm going to try to hold both of them side by side so you can kind of see a little bit of a size comparison.
That's the difference in a quarter ounce spoon and an 1/8 of an ounce spoon. And that 1/8 of an ounce I've used for years. And that particular spoon that Will is holding up, the smaller one, the 1/8 ounce model, that's actually a Cajun Thunder, and that was always my second choice in spoons. Now I guess it's my first choice in stores if I have to go buy it because that's the only one I can find. They don't sell Cape Lookout spoons anymore, and that Cajun Thunder is a really high grade plating on that, and that's a really old lure that Will is holding up. It's got some corrosion on the hook that you can use a file or a hook sharpener to sharpen the point on that hook. It's still got some life. But what's really cool about this particular spoon here is this is called a Cajun sled. And it's a spinner bait, an inline spinner bait with a spoon attached to it. So you've got a small Colorado blade with some beads that separate that Colorado blade from the spoon.
Yep.
So it gives even more flash.
Yeah, let me show. I wasn't showing that before, but let me hold that back up.
That's right. And what it does is it gives that spoon a little bit of vibration because a spoon doesn't give off much vibration without that, Colorado blade in front of it. It's just a variation to that spoon to give it a little bit different presentation in different situations that might be better when you're in tannic water to feel that little bit of a thump coming through the water that Colorado blade gives off. And then they see that flash and attack it like it's a bait fish. It mimics a bait fish.
Yeah, and sometimes that vibration under the water, I mean, you can hear it when you're doing a spinner bait. That kind of you can feel it on your rod, but you can also almost hear it if you picture yourself under the water at that time. What it's going to sound like just by the way it feels. But that little vibration sometime will be enough to what sets off a fish as well. Not just the flash, but also that feeling or sound that's coming off of it.
Yeah, it'll bring them out of structure. Yep. And also if they're hiding where they can't actually see that bait, they'll come out to look for it. Yep. So in some situations, that is what you want. And the reason why it's called a Cajun sled, I mean, Cajun Thunder makes it, and that's a Gulf Coast bait, mainly Louisiana,
right,
where spinner baits are king. I mean, that's one place you can still catch redfish on spinner baits, and even sight fish them with a spinner bait. Here, a lot of times they'll go running when they see a spinner bait.
And it was funny, like I think we were talking about it on our episode with Barney White down there about when y'all were talking about the trolling motor, buzzing the trolling motor, and that's actually bringing fish towards the boat because they were so curious. I mean, you got a whole different breed of redfish going on down there, whole different scenario than what we're dealing with here in North Carolina or on the southeast coast in general. So, yeah, those spinner baits. I mean, it's a different presentation, and that combined with the gold spoon, I could certainly see how that would be pretty effective down there in that region.
Yeah, unpressured fish is all it is. It's unpressured. There's so many miles of marshlands that don't see other anglers, or as many as we do here in this populated area and everywhere else on the East Coast. Another thing I wanted to get to is the copper spoon. The copper spoon has been one of my favorites over the years. And Will, if you want to hold that up, bud.
Yeah,
that's a 1/4 ounce copper spoon, and keep in mind, we use these ball bearing split ring swivels, attached to the eye of these spoons to keep your line twist down, just like we talked about in the previous podcast. But that copper spoon is really good, and I like it in clear water. A lot of times it gives off a little bit less flash than that gold. And I've even used it in tannic clean water, like the Northeast Cape Fear, and had real good success with that spoon. Drew and I, over the years, fishing the IFA all over the country, we'll experiment. He'll throw a gold, and a lot of times I'm throwing the copper.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been like that for years, just to find out what flash they're into. Sometimes they're going to run from one of those colors and chew the other one.
Yeah.
So
same thing with the soft plastic or hard bait or anything. If you've got a couple guys on the boat, until you find out what's working that day, throw a couple different things. You'd be surprised. The more baits that are out there, they might be hot on one thing one day and something else the next day. So.
Oh yeah, that's definitely the key when you've got. And on guided trips, I do the same thing. Nobody's ever throwing the exact same thing for that reason. But the copper is just like I said, it's something they don't see as much as the gold. Every tackle shop's going to have a gold or a silver spoon on the shelf. Mm-hmm. There's not as many that have the copper or the black or the white.
Right.
So the next color we've got is that white I was talking about last time.
Yeah, and this is a real unique one. It's white, but it's got a lot of almost like rainbow, metal flake in it.
It's got flake, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like a bass boat flake almost, but see if you guys can see this.
Yeah, and there's a couple different colors of white. I've got some all white spoons as well that don't have the metallic flake like that particular spoon has. But those spoons, like we were talking about last podcast, I have done real well in the surf with those white spoons for whatever reason, especially on the Gulf Coast. And it's clean, crystal clear where I'm throwing those around Panama City all the way up to Mobile Bay, mm-hmm. off of Orange Beach and Gulf Shores area. That white is just incredible, man, on those reds that are in the surf in the Gulf there.
On those white sandy beaches, it might have something to do with it in there in the suds and on the white sand. Who knows?
I don't know what I don't know what in that white color is attracting those fish. Inside I throw a lot of white in tannic water a lot of times, just because of just like the bass guys throw white. Mm-hmm. It's just a color that it seems like the fish will hit when they're not hitting anything else. It's a good search bait, and it's a good bait to use when the pressure's up and the fish are not, or down, or whatever's causing those fish not to eat. A lot of times they'll hit that white bait, and maybe that's what it is in the surf too. Maybe they're just pressured on the other stuff and they see that white spoon come through there and they just smoke it. I'm telling you that saved us in a IFA championship. Not the year that we won the national team of the year, but I think it was the year before that we had the IFA championship out of Orange Beach, and Drew and I made a run to Destin and area, and we were fishing the surf around there, and man, we couldn't get them to hit anything but that white spoon.
Really?
In fact, we broke a couple of those spoons off on 40-pound redfish because the big ones were mixed in, and you just had to get lucky, really. They were all mixed up in a 300-fish school. In a couple of those spots, and they would come up, man, and you had 2 shots on them each day. And it was weird, man, because, we had figured out what they would eat in pre-fish. So when we broke a couple of those spoons off, we didn't take a lot of those white spoons with us. So we were at Walmart late that night, man, spray painting gold spoons, man, white, and they were working.
Yeah, you couldn't find the white spoons at Walmart. Had to make your own.
Exactly.
There you go.
improvise. And last time we were talking about using the key to using, to keeping line twist down with using a gold spoon, because they will twist and they will spin a circle.
Mm-hmm.
When you bring them back to the boat, they will wobble, but they're gonna turn too. So they will cause a lot of line twist if you don't use a ball bearing swivel.
Yeah.
We talked about not using just a cheap barrel swivel with split rings, but using a ball bearing swivel with some split rings that were heavy duty, and those are the VMC ball bearing split ring swivels that I recommend, and that's what I use on my my gold spoons. So they've got split rings on each end of that barrel swivel, or that ball bearing barrel swivel. Yep. And
yeah, these particular ones here are 26-pound test, size 4. They definitely look,
they're beefy.
They're beefy. You can tell that they're going to hold up. It's a durable looking product. They just are, and they look a lot different than the standard swivels that you guys would get maybe at Walmart or somewhere like that. So, it's definitely a superior product there.
And they're not if you'll notice, the split rings are not overly big like you'll find on a lot of their competition's ball bearing swivels with the split rings. These are small split rings, but they're very heavy duty to be 26-pound tests. Most of them that are that small are around 16, 17, maybe 14-pound tests.
Yep.
And those aren't heavy enough.
No.
A redfish will, when you've got the drag tightened down for tournament drag, they're going to pull some of those off.
That's
or
right.
At least mess them up where you'll have to replace them. So that is a great product, and they're pretty reasonably priced too. They're not overly expensive. And like we were talking about in the previous podcast, you don't have to buy 100 of them.
Right.
Buy 3 or 4 packs of them, and they're going to last you probably 3 or 4 years, or even more if you're not using them much. Yeah. So,
well, I think a lot of people, and this is just a fishing thing. A lot of people put a lot of money and time into their fishing hobbies or their business or whatever it is, and a lot of times it's the little things, like this, like something like this small ball bearing swivel, which, in comparison to other swivels, it might be more expensive, but it's very minimal in the big scheme of things when you're talking about all the money we're spending on gear and boats and gas and everything else. Mm-hmm. So this is what's separating you from the fish at the end of the line. If this one little link in the process breaks, then you're out of that fish.
Yeah.
And if it's a tournament, you might be out of that money.
A lot of money.
So small price to pay for some added security there.
One more thing I'm gonna add on using a ball bearing split ring swivel on the front of that gold spoon. Most people do not tie a loop knot on anything,
mm-hmm.
and that's what I tie on almost 99% of every lure I put on my end of my line.
Right.
So whether I'm working a weightless hook, a jig head, a top water, a twitch bait, a stick bait, anything that's got a loop in. You can't use a loop knot on a traditional spinnerbait that's just basically an arm, a bend.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's gonna
It's
slide
just
up.
Gonna slide all over the place. It's not gonna work. But anything that's got a closed area, like the eye of a hook, or a loop at the end of a bait like this,
mm-hmm.
you can use a loop knot. Well, if you don't like tying loop knots, don't know how to tie one, or just can't figure it out, this right here does it for you, because you've got the split ring on the end of the spoon, so it's giving that extra little bit of wobble and
that's a good
play
point.
that you don't have to tie a loop knot to this swivel on the end of your line. So that also allows the bait to move a little bit more freely, and gives you the benefit of having a loop knot without having to tie a loop knot if you don't like tying them. So
that's a good point.
That's another thing that I really like about the split ring swivels as well. So
well, cool. I think that's about wrapping it up here for the spoon review, minus the black spoon.
Yeah, well,
which will be coming to you again soon.
That will be coming very soon, and in fact, it'll be up on our page probably next week at the latest. I've got plenty of black spoons. I was in a rush coming over here to the studio tonight, and I Had a lot of family stuff going
It's
on.
all
A
good.
lot of people calling. I just kind of dropped the ball in finding my bag of spoons, but I will have it next week, and we'll get it
That's all
put
right.
up on the site. So,
Well, yeah, and just one last closing thought here on this: the spoons in general, gold spoon, copper spoon, black, white, whatever you may want to use. Good versatile bait. You can't really work them incorrectly. You can jig them, you can roll them, you can do whatever you want to do as far as that retrieve goes, and it's gonna have great action in the water. It can work in a variety of ways. It's great for people, who may be, inexperienced or just starting out. So,
everything
get out
hits
there.
them. Everything hits them.
Mm-hmm.
I threw those things down in Southwest Florida one year when I went down there on a fishing retreat, and it's I caught snook on them.
Yeah.
And a lot, and that's the first time I'd ever used them for snook fishing. But I caught snooks, reds, I caught sharks, caught Spanish mackerel.
Wow.
I
Yep.
caught silver trout. I even caught some mangrove snapper on those things
Did
one
you really?
trip down there. I mean, it's just everything hits them. I mean, bluefish here hit them.
Yeah.
Flounder love them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's just something that in the freshwater species, I've used them for bass. I mean, everything hits a gold spoon. So,
Well, get out there and try it, guys. And if you get some stuff on your gold spoons, tag us in it online. We'd like to see what you're catching out there. So,
and email us any kind of questions if you don't understand what anything we've talked about tonight, or rigging that ball bearing swivel. If you have a problem finding them in your area, just let us know, and we'll try to point you in the right direction. I can send you a link on where to order those swivels.
absolutely. All right, guys, we really appreciate it. Until next time, this is the Inshore Journal. We'll talk to you later. Taglines.